What's up, guys? It's Cade Lamb. Welcome back to the Fear Not, Do Right podcast. Man, it has been absolutely crazy the last few months, really the last year since we last had a conversation. But today, I really wanted to bring a couple of items to your attention. Now, if you're a military guy, maybe even law enforcement, you're gonna know exactly what I'm talking about. But I think that these principles, these items of discussion are paramount in what we're seeing today. Whether it is demonstrations, riots, protests, whether it is the impending doom of nuclear warfare and the what seems to be like the last day and age, there's a lot that we can't control, right? This whole podcast is about creating practical kinetic solutions to complex social and political issues in order to enable a more autonomous and independent American people, right? Now, I'm sure you guys have heard the expression at some point in time, maybe you even use it yourself, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. That is absolutely true. I think we saw that best case, or a very good example of that back in 2020 with COVID, right? Everybody wanted to wipe their ass so bad that we ran out of toilet paper, and nobody was expecting that, right? You usually anticipate food, water, bread, grain, rice, your normal prepper type items. But toilet paper, totally gone, right? So how do we plan and how do we prepare for stuff that's out of our control, for things that we can't anticipate, but also what that planning process looks like? I know for myself, I oftentimes get overwhelmed when I think about those things that are not in my control, right? If you ask my wife, she may say I'm a little bit of a control freak, not too bad, but in a healthy way. I think part of that comes from being in the military and having that structure and that regimentation there. Everything, as stupid as it is, ends up making sense somehow. At least it makes sense to somebody. Now, when it comes to the military planning process that we used, it's a very simple acronym. Now, the military is very ambiguous, right? And even military planning is ambiguous. It's been said by some of our adversaries, don't try and anticipate what the American military is going to do because they don't even know what they're going to do. Don't try and learn their doctrines because they're not going to follow it. I think that's pretty hilarious. However, it is part of that process to be super dynamic, and ultimately it's about having a decentralized command structure, right? What tools can we give our soldiers on the ground, our commanders on the ground, the ability to plan and make decisions autonomously? So it's as much ambiguity and mystery as the military is draped in, it's actually very simple. The acronyms, are there just because it's fun, I guess. I don't know why we do the acronyms. But this acronym in particular is called METTC. It is the kind of either end of the bell curve. If you're on the, idiot side of the bell curve, right? METTC is going to be your go-to answer. As you come to the top of the bell curve, you're going to get into a lot of the different semantics and nuance and minutia of what those mission details are. And then as you fall back to the other side of super high-speed operators, it falls back to METTC. Now, what is METTC? METTC is our basis for planning. So if you want to plan like a commando, you're going to use METTC. And it is a, six-letter acronym, METTTC. METTC stands for Mission, Enemy, Time, Terrain, Troops Available, and Civilian Considerations. In the military planning spectrum, that makes sense. Like, it's super straightforward. You're gonna get a Frago, a Warno, you're gonna get hit with a mission that says, this is our mission, right? We're gonna jump out of this plane, we're gonna go to this area, and we're gonna destroy stuff and kill people. Pretty cut and dry. Then you go to your enemy. What is the resistance force going to look like on that objective, on the ground? Time. When are we going to do it? What's the most opportune time, right? You often hear historians talk about the mistake that not only Napoleon but Hitler made when they tried to fight a war on two fronts and tried to take on Russia in the winter, right? That's a bad time to do that. Additionally, we have terrain. Where are you? What are the terrain factors and considerations to make in your plan? If you're a Navy SEAL in Afghanistan, right, you're gonna look a lot different than a FBI agent in an urban environment. Totally different terrains. Your troops available, I think this is one of the most important ones. You're only as strong as your weakest link. That's a trope that has been heralded in leadership trainings and seminars for as long as people have been figured out they can make money off leadership training and seminars. But you are only as strong as your weakest link. You have to understand what your capabilities are, not just as an individual, but as a force. And then your civilian considerations. What is the potential impact of this mission and of the considerations that you've made going into that environment? How is it going to affect the populace? What are things that you need to watch out for? Are people going to be hostile? Are they going to be friendly? So let's go through and break those things down. Let's start with the mission. Now, most people listening to this probably aren't commandos. If you are a commando listening to this, my Marines, my paratroopers, my SEALs, my Green Berets, my Delta guys, if you're one of those dudes listening to this podcast, you know exactly what I'm getting at here. You're probably a subject matter expert on this already. But I don't think that the planning considerations change any more from being in the military to out of the military. We're just redefining the mission. As I would teach this to my young paratroopers when I was a team leader and a squad leader, we'd always start with the most basic thing that everybody in everyday life does, right? Before we talk about jumping out of airplanes, before we talk about going on high-speed missions, right? What is the most basic application of this? Your mission is less of your mission and more of your task at hand. What is the end state thing that you need to accomplish? So for this example, let's use getting milk and bread. Super simple. Every single person, I hope, has had the opportunity to go out and get milk and bread. There's a lot of places you can get milk and bread. If you're my wife, she just Amazon or Walmart deliveries it to the house, right? Smart on her. You just have to define the mission. Now, there's the everyday defining the mission, but there's also the business side to defining the mission, right? Maybe it's we're going to release a new product. We're going to take a different direction. We have a quota that we want to hit. We have a project that we need to attack, right? That's your mission, okay? Doesn't matter if it's in the corporate office or if you're a small business owner. Let's say you want to start a podcast, you want to own a t-shirt company, right? What's any product that you might want to put out, right? If it's an advertising campaign, that's your mission. But for now, we're going to go back to our milk and eggs because everybody gets milk and eggs. That's your mission. Now we're going to go into our enemy. Who is the enemy in getting milk and eggs? Well, let's redefine that. Words mean things, right? We're going to redefine what that word is, enemy, in METTC. What is the resistance that you're going to meet in getting milk and eggs? You understand where you're going to go, right? Everybody has that local Walmart, that local grocer, the Piggly Wiggly down the street. That's where you're going to go get your stuff. Maybe you can go to a Costco. Too easy. What is the most likely point of resistance or force of resistance that you're going to meet? This is one of those considerations that is becoming more and more prevalent for even safe communities, right? Where I'm at, out here in Arizona, you could probably say it's one of the safest communities in the United States of America. I mean, aside from the Gilbert goons, you're really not running into too many problems. The occasional road rage accident, maybe. But those conditions are changing. Those environmental conditions are changing. And so we need to be aware of that. That also plays into our terrain selection and our time selection. What kind of resistance are we going to meet? Now, everyone thinks that they want to be a Billy Badass and they're going to walk around like John Wick. And as soon as it goes down, they're going to see red and bodies hit the floor. I hate to break it to you, but 99% of you will not do that. You're probably going to freak out and panic and run. Most of that is caused because you don't have a plan, right? You didn't go through the MET-TC process. And so that's what we're doing here. You need to identify your resistance level. So whether it's, I know I'm in a bad part of town, or my Walmart has a bad part of town that it services, right? And there are questionable characters who could pose a risk or threat to my family. Okay, cool. What are the considerations you're gonna make about that? What are the considerations to make that they have, right? When you talk about the resistance, how are you going to meet it, and what are you going to be met with, right? For instance, there are several areas of Chicago where gang violence is so intense that the police actually don't respond. They're very limited in their ability to respond, because as they go through their planning process on how to respond to a call, they're being met with, okay, there's going to be a bunch of guys out there with Glocks with switches on it. We're going to be overmatched by a bunch of street thugs. So that's our resistance level that we're going to meet. We need to make considerations for that. This is usually when you get into those right of bang considerations as well, right? Do you carry a pistol with you? Do you carry a first aid bag in your vehicle? And it also ties into further elements of MET-TC that we'll get into. The next is going to be time. Time is critical here. Anybody who knows, time is everything. If you've ever been on target, if you've ever gone to hit a target, if you've ever gone on a mission, an op, that time is everything. 30 seconds can mean the difference between life and death. You getting pulled out on that chopper for exfil, or you getting left behind, right? Obviously, we're not in that dire of circumstances, but time does pose a huge factor. If you go to a Walmart in a lower middle class, or even a kind of a poverty area, what can you expect on the 1st and the 15th of the month, right? Those are paydays. When you're hitting the first weekend of the month, middle weekend of the month, not to stereotype or generalize people, but however, you're gonna run into a huge influx of people who didn't have money, who have money, that are getting their groceries, that are doing their thing. And that's fine. But those are considerations that you need to make. If you don't like those crowds, like I don't, I have a panic attack. I don't actually have a panic attack, but my cortisol shoots through the roof anytime I've been at a Costco or a Walmart mistakenly on those 1st or 15th of the month. And everybody is out there spending their paychecks. That's a huge consideration, right? It also changes on what time of day you go. If you go in the middle of the day, yeah, it's gonna be busy, but it's gonna be busier. But who are the kind of people that you're going to be interacting with? As opposed to, similarly, you go late at night, who are the kinds of people that you're gonna be interacting with? And that leads into terrain. Terrain ties into not only your resistance force, our enemy, or resistance force that we're gonna be meeting there, but also the time that we go and how those two correlate. Let's pick a location, right? Again, we're only getting milk and eggs here. We're going to a Walmart. Do we just go to the one that we know is closest, that's a little bit more high risk, that's gonna have more high risk individuals there, that's gonna have more high risk situations, more people, or more difficult times of the day? That's a huge consideration. Additionally, again, that time of day. You can go to the same Walmart at noon and go at 10 o'clock at night, and your experience is going to be dramatically different. You're going to see way different people there. The last thing you want to, and not only that, but your parking considerations too, right? I know that if I go at noon, I'm going to have to walk all the way across the parking lot. That's a lot different than being able to go at a different time of day where I know I can park close, or I'm going to be able to strategically park my car to pull through or pull out and be able to make a more rapid getaway if I have to. Even just in a, my wife doesn't understand all the time why I like to back my truck in everywhere. But it's for the ability to rapidly pull away. And that's one of those terrain considerations that we have, right? Additionally, right, when we talk about our resistance force, let's say that we have to plan for meeting that resistance force. If we do meet it, what do we do? Where's the exits? What are the considerations for the train? If you're inside the Walmart or if you're in the parking lot, right? How are you going to maneuver through the aisles? Which aisles are you going to hit? And this is where most husbands and wives, if you try shopping together, differ the most, because I know I can walk into any establishment, know exactly what I want, go straight there, and I can be in and out in 5 minutes with a full grocery cart or whatever it is. If we go to Target, my wife goes to Target. It's a whole activity in and of itself, and there's nothing wrong with that. But again, it's one of those time and terrain considerations that we have to make. And then again, if there is something that goes down, if we hit that point of bang and we are now right of bang, how are we getting out? That leads us into troop considerations. Now, you're only as strong as your weakest link. Now, if I'm rolling through with my dad, with my brothers, if I'm rolling through with my teammates, right? Well, how I respond to a crisis situation or a contentious or violent situation is going to change dramatically if I'm with them or if I'm with my wife and my two very small little girls. Now, I do have some compunction if there is a situation that I have no problem responding to it, right? If I have the ability, I have the responsibility. And so if there is a situation where someone needs to be, like if you think you're going to be that hero guy, cool, right? Let's plan for that. Make the plan for that. Likewise, if there is a medical emergency and you have the expertise, the knowledge to respond to that, before first responders are able to get there and you're able to help that person out, you have that ability, you have that responsibility. But that changes dramatically if you're by yourself, if you're with a team of people who are on a similar level, or if you're with small children. If I'm, let's say, buying milk and eggs, and the worst happens, the gunfight breaks out, and it's time to summon my inner John Wick, I'm not going to. The answer there, if I'm with my wife, if I'm with my kids, is to break contact. Get out, get away, leave the area as fast as possible. Because that's what my troops available are. My capacity to engage in a gunfight with my wife and small children it doesn't matter at that point. I no longer have that ability because my priority is making sure they are secure and removed from the situation. Likewise, or adversely, if I'm in a situation where I do have that ability to meet or overmatch a assailant, right? I believe there was a guy back in 2020, 2021, I think it was after COVID, where he was at a mall with his girlfriend. And they were in the food court, and I believe there was an armed gunman that came in. He started blasting people, and he was able to pull out his pistol and across the food court blast this dude with, I think it was like a full magazine, like 17 rounds. I think he missed one shot, but he was able to take out a armed gunman at 40 yards, right? Now, props to him for the incredible training and the preparation that he took to be ready for that situation. But that is a plan that I'm going to deviate from, considering who I'm there with, right? He was with his girlfriend and he was in the right place at the right time to respond in that manner. But more often than not, especially if you have kids, your priority changes right then and there to, he's not my priority now. My priority is getting them off of the X, so that way either first responders can address it, or if need be, right, I know they're secure and that response can be met. But again, that's in that far off imagination land where John Wick has a bulletproof suit. And that leads to our last consideration, is the civilian consideration. Now, usually in any sort of crisis environment, there is a threat, right? Whether it's an active shooter, if it's a riot that's breaking out, if it is a medical emergency, right? There is an emergency at hand, right? There's a crisis, there is a problem that is creating a situation that we're having to work around. But what are the civilian considerations? You have a plan. You probably have a firearm, you probably have a medical kit somewhere accessible to you, and you have the ability to maneuver in that environment, right? Whether that's running away, driving away, you're able to work around it. But what about everyone else who does not have a plan? They freak out. They lose it. They lose all composure, and that's really when all hell breaks loose. How do you maneuver around that? That's one of the things that's so incredible about that gentleman at the food court in the mall who was able to blast an assailant from 40 yards away. That is a tremendous amount of risk and liability as far as the civilian considerations go, because that stray round is literally life and death if it is misplaced. Likewise, law enforcement officers, I think, have the biggest considerations when they have to respond to a call. They have to be able to assess the situation, go through their entire MET-TC process on the fly, and then be able to make a judgment call right then and there on the spot to either save someone's life or end someone's life. It's a tremendous amount of responsibility. But those civilian considerations can mean life and death for you as well. If people start freaking out, if people start losing their minds, how do you maneuver around them? Let's say you are called to that opportunity to where you get to be that dude in the mall who blasts a guy from 40 yards away, right? You actually get to utilize your Second Amendment right, your CCW, and you say, you know what, I'm glad I spent all that time on the range, and you get to wave it in your wife's face and say, I need to go buy a new gun because my last one is locked up in an evidence locker, right? If you do get that opportunity, that is that next level of how do I ensure that I'm able to make the correct decision with the ultimate precision, with surgical precision and accountability. Because at the end of the day, you are accountable for everything that you're doing in that situation. If you misplace a shot, or if you administer, the wrong information, or if you give the wrong medical attention to somebody, that is a tremendous amount of liability. So what are the civilian considerations for that environment? Now, we've gotten our milk and eggs, right? I know when I go and get my milk and eggs, that's my mission. Where am I going to meet the least amount of resistance, right? Well, fortunately for me, I live in a gray area to where it's highly unlikely that I'm gonna meet any resistance. And even if I do, it's gonna be a Karen. That's the most likely point of resistance that I'll meet. That's okay. Well, let's take that for the consideration. I can go in the middle of the day when it's low traffic, and at my leisure at any time in the week. So that way, middle of the week, middle of the day, to where there's gonna be low traffic, and I'm able to get in and out of there. The terrain. I know where I want to park. Fortunately, most places around here in Arizona have veteran parking. I do take advantage of that. You know, if you want those same privileges, you can go talk to the recruiter. But being able to make smart parking choices, right? It's going to be a lot easier in the middle of the day, in the middle of the week, than it will be earlier or later, right? And actually, well, earlier is usually better. Right when those places open is usually when the parking is the most sparse. You can get in and get out. You can find really good parking spots. You can pull through parking spots so that way you don't have to back out and then pull forward. You can just pull straight out and you're on your way, right? Then in our troops available, honestly, when it comes to grabbing and going and just being fast, and this kind of ties into another topic that we'll save for another podcast, but I'm gonna roll as light as possible with myself, so that way we can be efficient, right? Me and my wife do this sometimes. If we need to run a quick errand, one of us will stay in the car, one of us will run in and get what we need. That way the car's already running, we're able to move as fast as possible. One of us is able to go inside and get things as efficiently as possible, right? One of those troop considerations and time considerations that we've made that make things a lot more smooth. And then last is our civilian considerations, right? And that ties back into time. If we can go in, there's low traffic, we're good to go. This also applies to our ingress and egress, right? How we approach those environments and how we leave those environments. I am actually having to go through this process, getting ready for Father's Day, as I need to go to outdoor store that is very popular and near the mall with a lot of traffic. A few days before Father's Day, where there's going to be an increase of traffic at that specific location, the parking is going to be a mess, the time management is going to be a mess, and the traffic considerations are going to be a mess coming in and off of that target, right? The target being the local shields. So what are the considerations I'm going to make? Now that's a more generalized day-to-day aspect when we can apply MET-TC. But this also applies in every other aspect of our life as well, right? Whether it's parenting, right? What's the mission as a parent for your specific kid? Not the enemy, but what is the resistance that you're going to meet as a parent for that parenting tactic, right? What's the environment that you're going to create for that parenting situation? What time are you going to take advantage of that parenting situation, right? We all know kids can be fickle and they're way different right after a nap than right before a nap. And then, the troops available. Are you doing it with your spouse or with your co-parent? Are you doing it with another kid, a grandparent? Who's involved in this process? Are you doing it with all the kids? And then, lastly, your civilian considerations. Who else is a part of that that's nearby, right? If it's targeted towards a specific kid, what are the other kids doing? How are they taking it? What is the impact on them? Likewise with your spouse, what's the impact on them through this, either if it's disciplinary, if it's rewarding, whatever the case may be, right? Your parenting strategy changes from kid to kid, and it's going to affect that entire household differently. Now let's talk about the business side of things, right? How does MET-TC apply to your small business, right? If you're a coach, if you're a trainer, if you are a owner and operator of a boutique, if you have a podcast, what is your mission? Identify your mission. For this use case, let's say we're going to launch a new product, right? And our goal, fall back to SMART goals, right? Let's set a measurable, attainable, quantitative goal with this product launch, okay? As we go to launch the product, we're gonna meet resistance. What resistance are we gonna meet? And I think there's two levels of resistance here. There's in-house resistance where you have logistic restrictions, you have time management as far as your personnel are considered, and then just the day-to-day of your operation, right? How do those things factor into the resistance of launching this product? Additionally, we have our competitors. What is the resistance we're gonna meet in our consumer base advocating for our competitors and vice versa, right? How do we overcome those obstacles to meet our goal? Then is time, right? If I post a advertisement for my product release at 1 a.m. with no hashtags or anything of the sort, my engagement's going to be dramatically different than if I post it at peak hours for my targeted audience. So those are your time considerations. Additionally, if you go to drop, like, say, a hoodie or a jacket in the middle of summer, your engagement's going to be way different than leading into the fall, leading into the winter. Then we go into our terrain. What is the space? What is the economic space of this product that we're trying to launch? How is it going to impact that product space? And what are the considerations and obstacles there that we need to manage? If you own a brick and mortar that you're going to be launching this product out of, right, it's a little bit easier to tangibly consider those things. Where do we put it on the shelves? Where do we hang it in the store? Where do we place it on our website? How do we administer it, right? How do we place it in the landscape that we're trying to yield the most success? Then we go into our troop considerations. This can be brand deals. This can be further marketing pushes, right? Including yourself. Are you wearing your product? Do you believe in your product? Do you have influencers wearing your product or using your product? Are they advocating for your product? How are you able to employ the people that you have as effectively as possible in that situation, right? I think with the troops available, in our last example, we saw them more as a liability. How do we get them out of the situation? How do we remove them to be as efficient as possible? But in this case, we can also flip it to where, how do we employ them to be as efficient as possible? One of the big things that you learn in positions of leadership, and whether it's a fire team, a squad fire, fire team squad, a squad, a platoon, whatever it is, right? In that military application, sometimes it's not necessarily about being the best shooter, but being able to place the best shooter in a position to be successful. Evaluate your team and look at how they're able to take that product with their skills and their knowledge and push it out to be the most successful. And then there's the civilian considerations, and let's call this your consumer market. What do they need? What do they want, and what do they expect from you? What is your reputation as a brand? How are you able to push this out and they're going to, in the best way that they're able to receive it, that they understand it, right? If you were to go back to 1970 and introduce the iPhone, they would have no idea what you're talking about. If you're going back to 1870 to introduce the iPhone, they would probably throw rocks at you and burn you at the stake and call you a witch. And it's probably more 1670, but you get the idea. We have to be very targeted towards our civilian considerations, our consumer market, right? And that's all part of those MET-TC considerations. How is our resistance going to impact our consumer market? How is our time going to impact our consumer market? How is the economic terrain going to impact our consumer market? How is our team going to impact our consumer market? And vice versa, how is our consumer market going to backwards impact each of those things to consider? MET-TC is super simple. And as you practice it more and more, you get really good at it. You're able to say, this is what I need to do. This is the problem I'm going to run into doing it. These are the tools and the considerations that I have at hand to make me successful. Let's line it out, let's draw it out, or even let's run through it real quick with the team so that way we can execute. At the end of the day, an imperfect plan, executed violently is far more effective than a perfect plan executed poorly. It doesn't matter necessarily if you have the perfect planning procedure in place. If you can utilize the elements of MET-TC, your mission, your enemy, your time, terrain, troops available, and civilian considerations, you're going to be more successful, especially over the individual who's going to take none of those considerations. It's not important to them. And like I said in the beginning, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Even in, like I was saying, rapid situations, right? From personal experience, being able to take my fire team and be able to put them into an occupied building strategically, tactically. How am I doing that, right? Even as simple as that. I know that I want to get inside of that building. Who's in there? How are they going to meet me? When am I doing it? Where am I doing it? Who am I doing it with, and what are their capabilities to make our mission successful? And what are the auxiliary factors that could impact us in our success of that mission? This doesn't just apply to our day-to-day, that tactical level. There's kind of 3 levels that they talk about in the military. The tactical level, which is like Navy SEALs kicking in houses. Then we have the operational level, which is a lot of Navy SEALs kicking in a lot of different houses. Then that is towards strategic level goals, where we're able to then occupy a city, a town. We're able to take a strategic position from that. Now, likewise with our businesses, let's say, our tactical game is going to be something like implementing a new product, executing a new podcast, putting out a new post on social media. Those are tactical level items and individual level items that are day-to-day, easy to accomplish. Our operational level is more part of a campaign. What are we doing within our, the series of product releases, drops, podcasts, ad pushes, to accomplish a larger goal than that? A 3-month timeline, a quarterly timeline, a semi-annual timeline. And our strategic level is going to be how we apply METTC towards our all-encompassing goals, right? My mission is to create a successful business. That is about as broad stroke as you can get. Who doesn't want to be a successful business owner? Well, what is the resistance that you're going to meet with your prospective business? What is the resistance that you're going to meet from local governments with registrations, with zoning laws, with all those minutia that they love to hit you with, right? What is the resistance that you're going to meet from your competitors, from the environment that you're going to be working in? Then how are you going to manage your time as that business owner, as you're trying to be a successful business owner, right? Are you going to take that hyper Instagram influencer approach where you're up at 3:30 in the morning, putting your face in a bowl of ice and running a mile every day? Is that part of your mission plan going to make you successful in what you're trying to accomplish? Maybe. Then we go into the terrain. What is the market environment that you're doing this in? Are troops available? Are you able to do it by yourself? Are you able to employ a team? Even myself as a small business owner, I'm not alone and I'm not doing this by myself. Right on the other side of this camera right here is my extremely skilled little brother who is managing all of the technical side of things to make this podcast happen right now. That was a troops available consideration that I made to make myself more successful in my mission of delivering to you the Fear Not Do Right podcast. Then we go into our civilian considerations, right? What is going to be the right of bang impacts on them? What is this product going to do? What is this podcast going to do? How are they going to take it? And what information can we take from them to input back into our formula to change and tweak and refine our planning process so that as we continue to do it, it gets more effective, it's able to strike better engagement, and we're able to see greater results in the long run. I challenge you to write it out. If you can write out this process a few times, do a couple practical exercises with this, that is probably the best way to go for it. And do it at those mundane levels. Plan for milk and eggs. Plan for a Father's Day gift or a 4th of July party, right? If you're throwing a 4th of July party, use METTC to identify your goals, identify your mission, and plan it thereafter. I would expect that you would see a smoothness to it that really helps you out there. You're able to identify all of those considerations and then pace plan or create a pace plan, your primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency items for each one of those factors, to where, if one thing falls through, you already have those considerations in place to make sure everything goes smooth. That's what that planning process is. Like I said, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. But especially as we go into more chaotic and turbulent environments, if there's riots and protests, if we have those plans in place to where we know exactly how to respond, how we want to respond in those situations, our level to maintain our composure, our ability to maintain composure, and our effectiveness of not reaction, but response is going to keep us safe. It's going to keep us successful in those environments. I think that is probably one of the overcast shadows of what we're seeing in today's environment. The last thing that I want to see or experience is getting caught up in traffic and one of these protests or violent outbreaks show up and I'm inserted into that situation. What is my plan? What is my MET-TC process for that? I have mine. Do you have yours? As you implement this, not just in your day-to-day life, but as in your business, in your families, in those contingency plans that you hope to never have to incur, you're going to find that the process gets easier, it gets simpler, and you're able to do it on the fly. But again, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Thank you guys for joining me on the Fear Not Do Right podcast. I will catch you guys next time.